When Dana White considers John Jones the greatest of all time, he's not talking about overall current activity. And that's something very important to understand. Now, you're probably wondering, what is this in reference to? Obviously, the Dana White Contender Series post fight press conference that he was doing, which, by the way, interesting enough, I think the Dana White's Contender Series post fight press conferences literally have become a podcast of its own. Now, obviously, those are nothing more than needed rituals after the fight and traditions after most fights. But in reality, Dana White Contender Series post fight press conferences have become a podcast in of its own. In fact, more so to the fact that I don't even know who the guys were fighting in Dana White's Contender Series, nor did I even bother to check or even go out and review, although I should, right? If we want to make this a legit combat sports and in particular mixed martial arts page, it would probably be a good idea to do so. But like most people, I didn't, and with good reason, because let's just be honest about it. By the end of the day, Dana White's Contender Series was nothing more than just an ego boost for his brand, and not only that, his whole entire portfolio of whatever it is that he's building. But at the same time, it's also a great way of obtaining regional fighters and potentially turning them into, let's say, seasoned professionals of some sort, right? Or maybe even future world champions in the likes of Jamal Hill. Sean O'Malley comes to mind when it comes to that. Now, you want to think about the fact that Uriah Faber and Snoop Dogg were commentating on his fights, the official commentators of his fights, at least not the way that I remember it. It was an option. You could either have the conventional commentating, or you can have Snoop and Uriah basically commentate and do a fight companion at the same time. So it was like these little options that you had going on. And Sean O'Malley was a product of that. But nowadays, let's just be honest, as far as it's also a recruiting tool from the regional scene, it's also a place where many people, especially MMA journalists, can go and ask Dana White various questions that in reality really have nothing to do with the fight in and of itself. And I'm talking about the Dana White's Contender Series. Now, keep in mind, they give you plain shorts. Not only that, you can't have any of your sponsors. They don't even give you a real UFC glove. At least it's UFC made, but it doesn't have the UFC symbol because it's a hierarchical way of telling you, well, you didn't quite make it yet. So with that in mind, let's get into the subject of why Dana White is saying what he's saying. Understand this. When he is saying that John Jones is the greatest of all time, he's talking about overall work. Now, he's also making excuses based on his injuries. That's a reality, but you also have to understand he is taking into consideration the reality that injuries are a real part of mixed martial arts. It really is. Injuries are more prominent in mixed martial arts than they are in boxing. Let's be real about this, right? In boxing, the only damage that you truly take is within your brain. Now, everything else, if you train boxing all day long, believe it or not, it's a lot easier on your body, a lot easier on your joints. You don't have a person constantly grinding on you in the wrestling mat. On top of that, you don't have a person kicking your leg. So therefore, certain joints in your bodies are going to be messed up. Not in that way. Not in that way in boxing. Not at all. It's an aerobic sport. On top of that, there are inherent dangers, but the reality is it's just not as intense as mixed martial arts due to the anaerobic demands that mixed martial arts takes out of you. But either way, not to get off the tangent on that, what people have to understand is that Dana White is also a promoter. And what exactly does that mean? Well, the way that a lot of you perceive Dana White it is as if he is a commissioner, someone like Roger Goodell or David Stern or something to that effect. Well, he is and he's not. And let me explain in full context what I mean by that. So, in other words, if he was to, let's say, be just the commissioner, which he is, you also have to understand that he's also the owner. So he has to operate in two different spectrums of things, right? You look at Eddie Hearn. Do you ever see Eddie Hearn say anything disparaging about Anthony Joshua? Not whatsoever. Why? Because it's his fighter and it's also his company that Anthony Joshua is under. So he's not going to say any disparaging things about him. But we all can also argue that Anthony Joshua is not really the best in the world at what he does right now. Jon Jones is. So therefore, it is extremely incumbent upon Dana White to glaze him as what the internet culture of MMA constantly harps about with Dana White. Well, the other reality of this is that you also have to understand Jon Jones has never lost. Now, you could tell just based on my beard alone that I'm probably a big Islam Makhachev fan, but let's call a spade a spade. Dana White is right. Islam Makhachev has lost before. Sure, does he have a great trajectory in his career right now? Is he a bigger superstar than he ever was? Is he probably an even bigger superstar than Khabib? Maybe. That remains to be seen. That has yet to occur, but it is within the realms of possibilities due to where he is at in his career right now in comparison to where Khabib was at with his 3 title fights. And even with those conversations with Khabib being the greatest of all time versus Jon Jones, and now Islam versus Jon Jones, the pound for pound title and what have you, the reality of that situation is this. Khabib doesn't care. Does Jon Jones care? Maybe to a certain extent. He should care because he is on top of that list. But here's the shocker of it all. And I'm going to tell you in the end why Jon Jones really cares by the end of this video. So stay tuned, okay? But first, more on Dana White. But remind me, I'm going to tell you in the end of this video exactly why Jon Jones cares more than anybody, okay? I'll just tell you right now. The reason why Jon Jones cares is because of the fact that he is the #1 guy in the world right now. But just like most things in MMA, things are subject to change due to certain matchups and due to certain results of certain matchups. So therefore, he's going to leave before Tom Aspinall could get his hands on him. And what he is hoping for and what he is banking, and he's not wrong, by the way, he's banking on the fact that all of you are going to forget. And the reality is you will. Jon Jones will go down as the greatest of all time. And not only that, you'll forget the fact that he never fought Tom Aspinall. Now look, Khabib, he's never fought Tony Ferguson. And just like Tony Ferguson, Tom Aspinall has lost before. But for the people that swear up and down that Khabib is the greatest of all time, do you think that the conversation of Tony Ferguson pops up? I think so. I think it does pop up. But let me tell you why it's not as important with this one. Because it pops up only for the hardcore fans of MMA. The casual observers don't even know who Tony Ferguson is. Now, what about Jon Jones? Going back to why Dana White said what he said. Understand this. Most casuals are not going to know who Tom Aspinall is. And this is one of the demotivating reasons as to why Jon Jones never wanted to fight him in the first place. People are going to forget. But let's also understand that Jon Jones knows MMA better than you and I. And if you know MMA in a decent amount of knowledge to the sport, you would know that Tom Aspinall can present serious problems to Jon Jones. So this is the reason why Jon Jones is going to retire before you can even have a real challenge. Okay? Just like Khabib. Nobody cares about Tony Ferguson, at least in the casual space. And when it comes to Tom Aspinall and John Jones, no one really knows who Tom Aspinall is. But you ask all these guys that are NBA fans, NFL fans, especially the fact that his brothers play in the NFL, and you look at all these other sports, which, by the way, are, how do I say this, African-American dominated. Obviously, he has a space within that particular part of that demographics of people that follow him. But those same people, I promise you, they don't know Tony Ferguson, nor do they know Tom Aspinall. And by the end of the day, John Jones is content with that. Now, going back to Dana White, why is he doing this? It's still his brand. It's still the truth to a certain extent. And when you have your own brand and your own company, you're going to twist the truth in the most best favorable way that the world can look at you. And that is all that I have for this particular video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next content, inshallah.